The four candidates in Jacksonville's mayoral race squared off in a debate last night, sparring over the Jacksonville Landing, which Mayor Lenny Curry wants to tear down. The debate drew some bold claims for and against that idea. On Your Side's Eric Alvarez fact-checks them tonight in our Verify segment.
The Jacksonville Landing is one of the most iconic and recognizable landmarks on the city skyline, and it took center stage in the first and only mayoral debate this election cycle. Last month, the mayor's office announced an $18 million plan to tear down the Jacksonville Landing. It sets aside $15 million to reclaim the property from Jacksonville Landing Investments, which city council member and mayoral candidate Anna Brochet criticized at Wednesday's debate.
It is absolutely an election year payout, and we are paying more than 3 times the value of the property, and that doesn't really seem like a very good deal for the taxpayers.
According to the property appraiser's office, the Jacksonville Landing is valued at just under $4 million, less than a third of the $15 million announced last month. Curry, who once supported a plan to turn the property into a green space, fired back.
Come on. Book value, people know the book value is not the market value, and the councilwoman should know that. She's an accountant. If you pay $100,000 for your home today, in 15 years, it's not worth $100,000, it's worth a market value.
Omega Allen framed her response as an opinion.
I don't believe that the landing needs to be destroyed. I believe that it can be repurposed.
Jimmy Hill issued more of a warning.
But if it is turned into a grass field, I'm going to predict right this minute that it's really just being stored for future development and to be sold.
Neither of these answers provides any evidence, so there's not much to verify.
I'm also challenged by what seems to be foolish and tearing down a building before we really have an understanding of exactly what's going to happen on that property.
First Coast News can verify, aside from last year's renderings of the green space, Curry's office has not provided a concrete plan for what will replace the Jacksonville Landing. Now, of course, the candidates discussed other topics during last night's debate, and it's far too long to condense into just a matter of minutes. Luckily, you can see the debate in its entirety for yourself at firstcoastnews.com. Eric Alvarez, First Coast News, on your side.
Thank you, Eric. And remember, if you have something you would like us to verify, just send an email to verify@firstcoastnews.com.